Sup, dude? 8 dudes born in the Dominican Republic have made it to the NBA. The very first was Tito Horford, a 7'1" center who played 60 games with the Bucks from 1988 to 1990. During his 2-year career, the big fella averaged a calm 6 minutes, 1 point, and 1 rebound. From 1990, it took nearly a decade for the second Dominican dude to get to the NBA. This guy's name was Felipe Lopez, aka the Dominican Michael Jordan. He was a 6'5" guard who got drafted in 1998 by the Spurs but was immediately traded to Vancouver. His career went much better than Horford's, but still pretty underwhelming, especially for a guy nicknamed Dominican Michael Jordan. He lasted just 4 seasons, finishing with a career stat line of 6 points, 2 rebounds, and an assist. The Dominican Hamidou Diallo would have been a much more accurate nickname. The third Dominican to make it to the NBA was Luis Flores. He made it to the league just a couple years after Lopez, but unfortunately the third time was not the charm. He was by far the worst of the three, appearing in just 16 games and never stepped foot on an NBA court again. After him, the Dominican government probably wanted to force their tallest citizens to make a baby, then inject the baby with growth hormones Yao Ming style. But I'm happy to let you know they didn't. They kept it ethical, to which karma rewarded them with their first good NBA player. His name was Francisco Garcia. He was a 6'7" shooter whose best years came from 2007 to 2009. During that time, he averaged 12.5 points while knocking down nearly 40% of his threes. He carved out a nice role with Sacramento and ended up playing in the league for a decade, but as with the English language, the playoffs were a foreign concept to him. He only played 14 playoff games his whole career, but that's not his fault. That's thanks to being a Sacramento King for 8 seasons. Individually, he was the very first good Dominican NBA player ever, but his accomplishments were overshadowed by Tito Horford's sperm, Al Horford. He was a few years younger than Garcia, but on a whole nother level than him. Up until the age of 14, Al lived in the Dominican Republic. Then right before he started high school, he moved to Michigan in order to pursue his hoop dreams. He started high school knowing very little English, which definitely sucked, but didn't let it get in the way of him becoming the Dominican LeBron James. Fast forward to his senior year, he was named the Class A Michigan Player of the Year after averaging 21 points, 13 rebounds, and 5 blocks. Standing at 6'8" and around 210 pounds, the big fella had lots of colleges interested in him. He ended up committing to Michigan, but then he visited Florida, loved it, and switched his commitment to the Gators. He cheated on Michigan, but it was one of the best decisions he ever made. Big Al joined a stacked 2005 Florida Gators squad composed of 8 future NBA players, most notably Joakim Noah, Corey Brewer, and David Lee. Despite so many really talented dudes to battle with for minutes, his D caught Billy Donovan's eye. Pause. So much so that just 5 games into his freshman year, he was named a starter. From that point on, he averaged an impressive 2 blocks, 1 steal, 7 rebounds, and 6 points. His teammates started calling him the Godfather because of his no bullshit approach to the game as well as his leadership. Those 2 things helped the Gators make it all the way to the second round of the tournament. Villanova whooped their ass, but the pain didn't last very long. During the offseason, Al put a lot of work into his offensive game, and it showed his sophomore year. His scoring average jumped from 5.6 to 11.3 points per game, and his field goal percentage went from 48% to over 60. The big fella's improvement, along with Corey Brewer, Torian Green, and the other hairier big fella Joakim Noah also improving, led to the glory days of Florida basketball. They started out the 2005 to 2006 season winning 17 games in a row, then finished it as national champions. Horford was an integral part in their success, averaging 12 points, 10 rebounds, and a block during the tournament. After that, he could have left college and put his name into the draft, but he decided to stay, as did Corey Brewer, Torian Green, and Joakim Noah. The power of friendship led them right back to the national championship, where they beat Greg Oden and Mike Conley, becoming just the 7th back-to-back champ ever. With as many championships as testicles, Big Al was a hot commodity in the 2007 draft. His now 6'9", 240-pound frame, plus his versatility, mobility, rebounding, defense, interior scoring, and gorgeous smile made NBA teams grow a chub. There were only 2 dudes more coveted, Greg Oden and Kevin Durant. Those 2 ended up getting picked in that order. I'm sorry, Portland fans. Then with the 3rd pick, the Hawks took the Godfather. He joined a Hawks squad led by ISO Joe and Josh Smith, who were great, but the team sucked. Good news is, the petite Dominican center from Florida was about to slightly change that. In his rookie year, he averaged 10 points, nearly 10 rebounds, and helped Atlanta improve by 7 wins. It wasn't much, but it was honest work. They finished with the record of 37-45, somehow making it into the playoffs, but unfortunately, they were matched up with the 66-win Celtics in round 1. This should have been a gruesome murder by by Boston, but somehow through 4 games, the series was all knotted up. Big Al was a huge reason for this. He was inhaling rebounds like a high schooler inhales Simpsons cards. During games 3 and 4, he pulled down 27 rebounds. Then the next game, they got destroyed, but he dropped a calm 16 points in game 6, forcing one more. His scoring throughout the series had been pretty up and down, but for a rookie, he impressed. He had a few nice games, including 20 points in his first playoff game ever. Sadly, the big fella was not quite ready. In game 7, he gave him 8 points, shooting 3 for 12 from the field, which wasn't enough to get them to the second round, and they lost by 34. His next season, he put up similar stats, but the team improved a bunch, finishing with 47 wins. In the first round of the playoffs, they went up against the 43-win Miami Heat led by the Flash, not Josh Primo. This was one of the worst series of basketball ever. Every single game was a blowout. Good news is the Hawks won in 7, moving on to the semifinals. Bad news is Al sprained his ankle and MVP LeBron was waiting there to resize their asshole. He was Jason Love and the Hawks were Lena the Plug. The dude averaged 34 while shooting like 50% from 3, destroying Atlanta by double digits 4 games straight. Out of those 4 games, Horford played in 3, averaging 3 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists. The fact that he played while injured showed his resilience, but he didn't need to do all that. They didn't even come close to winning a game. Despite probably getting PTSD from being violated by LeBron, the Hawks managed to win 53 games the next year. Their success was largely due to Big Al taking a step up, solidifying himself as the team's second best player. The big fella put up 14 points, 10 rebounds, a block, and joined ISO Joe on the All-Star team. Everything was going great in Atlanta, but as every Atlanta fan knows, those good times never last. In round 1 of the playoffs, Brandon Jennings and John Salmons took him to 7. The Hawks scraped by and made it to round 2, but waiting for them was Dwight Howard and the Orlando Magic. To paint a picture of this series in your head, the Hawks were the people of North Korea and Dwight was Kim Jong-un. He relentlessly tortured them for 149 minutes, sending Atlanta home in 4 just like LeBron did the season prior. Though the next year, Horford continued improving, made the All-NBA third team, and got revenge on Dwight, kicking his ass in the first round. But just like in both years prior, a superstar came along and wiped the floor with them in the second round. This time it was MVP D Rose who averaged 30 and 10, sending them home in 6 and into a downward spiral. Over the course of the next 3 seasons, the Hawks' improvement came to a halt. They were mid per usual and got bounced in the first round each year. A big reason for this was Al got injured in 2011 as well as 2013, missing a majority of both years. By the 2014-15 season, he healed up and out of nowhere, the Hawks made jaws drop like they were a pair of huge tits. Somehow, pretty much the same exact team from the season prior managed to win 60 games and claim the first seed over LeBron's Cavs. They did that with a starting 5 of Jeff Teague, Ashton Kutcher, DeMar Carroll, Paul Millsap, and Big Al. No superstar, just pure vibes. They all knew their role and embraced it, playing an extremely unselfish white AAU team style of play. Their utilization of the power of friendship had them dubbed the Spurs of the East, which is a bit of a stretch because Horford's great, but he is not Tim Duncan, and Jeff Teague didn't hook up with his teammate's wife. Tony Parker. Horford was arguably the best player on the team, averaging 15 points, 7 rebounds, a steal, and a block, which was nothing crazy, but his impact went far beyond the box score. He led the team in win shares, offensive win shares, box plus minus, and value over replacement. The dude was a jack of all trades, but master of none. Although they breezed through the regular season, the real test was the playoffs, and oh boy did they get tested. The first test was the New York City Police Department. On April 8th, 2015, Thabo Sefolosha was outside a New York nightclub when 5 cops tackled him and broke his leg with a baton. This resulted in him missing the entire playoffs, which was a huge blow because he was one of the team's best perimeter defenders. Fuck those cops. In the opening round, Atlanta matched up with the 8th seeded Nets led by 400-year-old Kevin Garnett. This series raised some eyebrows because Brooklyn gave them trouble, stretching it to 6. Then in the second round, the Wizards took them to 6-2, which made them look even more like frauds. Despite the not so smooth start, they still made it to the conference finals where they matched up against LeBron. I'm a Hawks fan and this was one of the first series I ever watched. I was super excited, but then it started and it made me realize Spurs of the East was not an accurate nickname. A much better one would have been LeBron's pocket pussy. It was like watching a prison rape. It was horrific. He averaged a damn near 30-point triple-double, and on top of that, J.R. Smith was hitting stupid-ass shots. Big Al contributed 11 points and 5 rebounds, which unfortunately wasn't enough to win them a game. They got swept. After that, his time in Atlanta was sadly coming to an end, but his career was far from over thanks to his adaptability. Up until this point, he had sunk 21 threes over the course of 8 seasons. He had been purely an inside-the-arc scorer, but then out of nowhere, he showed up to the 2015-16 season with a strap. The dude shot 256 threes and made 88 of them. His jumper looked like he was trying to block himself, but it was hitting. His added range along with his versatility intrigued the Celtics, who offered him a $113 million contract contract, which he sadly signed. I was mad he left us, but it was the smart decision. The Hawks were ass and Boston was not ass. Over the course of the next 3 seasons, Big Al helped them make 2 conference finals and made Joel Embiid his bitch. After his contract was over, Philly decided if you can't beat him, join him, and took Horford from Boston, but that didn't work at all. After just 1 season in Philly, he got traded to OKC, where he pretty much just sat out because they didn't want to win. At this point, he was 35, but Father Time wasn't close to catching him. He could still provide great D and a spread floor. The Celtics knew this, so they decided to trade for him back. Just like his first stint with them, they went deep into the playoffs, this time finally getting to the finals. Curry cooked them, but as we all know, they made it back this season and fucked Dallas up. Big Al was a huge piece for them in the finals, playing 30 minutes a night and sunk 47% of his threes. It's actually crazy how he went from pure post scorer to elite shooter. Without developing his jumper, he could have very well been out of the league a few years ago, but now he has a ring and still isn't done yet. You know who else developed a jumper that had a significant impact on his career? Jason Kidd. You can click here to watch the video I made on him. Thanks for watching this one. Hope you enjoyed. Bye, dude.